This is one of those days where I've just been having deep thoughts about life and culture and generations and like the internet. So this isn't necessarily a Christian video. You could probably tie it into something Christian, but this is just a talk video. Why does it feel like Gen Z like already reached its prime in like junior high school and early high school? Like why does it feel like after like the sophomore year after like the sophomore year and like early college years of Gen Z, why does it feel like they already reached their prime and now they're just gone? Like, if you look at past generations, like boomers, Gen X, millennials, it's like the boomers right now, like, I'm Gen Z, I'm 16, and like some of the older Gen Zs are like they're already actually in their like mid to late 20s now, which is crazy to think about. But still, a lot of like the older Gen Zs are still in their early 20s and stuff, and I'm 16. Yet if you like look at internet culture and like the culture of like Gen Alpha, it's like we're already at like we're already like Zoomers, we're already out of date. And it's like, where did this narrative even come from? That like Gen Z should be in their prime, like the boomers. When they were our age, they were in their prime. Gen X, when they were our age, they were in their prime. Like for boomers, they were in their prime all the way up until they were like 35. And Gen X, although the prime did kind of go a little bit lower, Gen X was already in their prime until they were at least 30. Same with like millennials. But why does it feel like Gen Z's prime why does it feel like the prime of the generation went from like 30 to 35 and ended to like now it's ending when you're in your mid 20s? Like why is there a big thing with Gen Z where it's like, I'm 25, my prime is gone, or I graduated high school, it's time to never have fun again in my life? Like, bro, you're young. Why are you? Who's pushing this narrative of like Gen Z's already, their prime is over, it's time to just, work for the rest of your life and be depressed? Like, where did this come from? And you know where I think it came from? The fact that Gen Alpha is like the generation that has the most internet access, and there's just so many like iPad kids. I feel like what happened is they're letting Gen Alpha on the internet and actually influence the culture. Because I'm pretty sure like the oldest Gen Alpha is actually freshmen. It's crazy to think about. They're already in high school. I'm pretty sure the oldest Gen Alpha is already like 14 years old. So like Gen Alpha is still very young, but they're old enough, and especially in this very internet-driven culture, they're old enough to actually have influence on the internet culture and culture of like generations and stuff, and like the teens and the young, junior hires, whatever. They're already able to like shift the culture because of the internet. I feel like Gen Alpha is going to have the most influence on the culture because of the internet. And it's that reason why we already see our generation being painted as like Zoomers or whatever, like they're out of date, because they already have so much influence with the internet culture at such a young age. And in the generation that we live in, internet culture matters because it affects the culture of our entire generation. Like Gen Z, Gen Alpha, social media driven culture. So anything that is like huge on the internet is going to impact like our entire generation. Which, if you couldn't tell, it's not going so well. Like, what is being popularized on the internet is not going so well for our generation. But, anyways, not even gonna get into that. But it feels like the reason why so many Gen Zers are already like doomers and they're depressed and they're like, oh, my prime is already over and I'm only like 19 years old. It's the narrative came from just simply Gen Alpha having so much internet access and so much knowledge that they're already shifting internet culture at such a young age, like even being in just junior high or in their freshman year of high school. At such a young age, they're already having so much influence on internet culture that, like, it feels like we're already out of the scene. We're already out of the picture. And I find that so weird. Like, I feel like we need a refinery. We need, like, I'm trying to get the words to say what I want to say, because I just wanted to upload something like this. We need to change things, really. Because, like, let's look at boomers. Boomers, they were in their prime from, like, their early 20s all the way to, like, when they were 35. And then Gen Xers and millennials in their prime from, like, their early 20s all the way to when they were, like, 30. Maybe, honestly, they were in their prime in high school, too. Kind of the same with boomers, too. And it's like, then all of a sudden Gen Z comes in and boom, it's just doomers and depression and all of this stuff. And, like, it feels like it instantly just I don't know how to explain it. I feel like what we need to do is stop caring. What this generation needs to do is stop caring about what other people think about you and just start. I feel so disconnected from this generation. Like, obviously, to an extent, I still am connected to this generation because I'm in the generation. But what I mean by that is, like, I'm only 16, but I've started to care less and less about what people think about me. I've started to care less and less about, like, clothing styles and hairstyles and influence and all that. I've, like, started to care less and less about that, and I just want to live a quiet, simple life. And it feels like the internet is moving the culture so fast that you don't even get a time to breathe, and then boom, your generation is all of a sudden, like, boomer status, and, like, you should be depressed because your prime is over, and, you know, you need to get a job and start a family now or something, which we all know that my generation is not going to start families until they're, like, in their 30s and 40s because of birth control and, you know, hookups and stuff like that, and pornography. We already know that that's gonna happen, but I just feel like we need to slow down. We need something to happen to slow us down. Like, okay, we look in the past. What were the boomers born out of? Like, how did that seemingly... I mean, again, there was a lot wrong. Well, actually, there was a lot wrong with that time, but there was a lot right with that time, too. Like, a lot wrong with that time, like, you know, a lot more drugs, a lot more sex, a lot more immorality. But there was also a lot right with that time, like the civil rights movement and, like, the booming economy and, like, and, you know, their prime lasting longer. Like, it feels like the boomers were still in their prime even in, like, the early mid-70s, you know what I mean? Like, with all the hard rock songs, classic rock songs, and they were, like, still having influence in the early mid-70s into the next decade, when a lot of Gen Xers were being born. But our generation has barely even been alive. Well, actually, we've been alive for a decade, all of us. It's crazy. I keep losing track of time. But, like, our generation has only been alive for, like, has only had, like, influence for, like, a decade, it seems. Like, the 2000s and the 90s, like, every other generation, it seems like they had influence for 2.5 decades. Like, boomers, influence for the 60s and the mid-70s. Gen Z, influence for the the 80s and the mid 90s. Millennials influence for the 2000s and like the early 2010s humor of like Vine and stuff, and like when the internet started becoming more popular to like the mid 2010s. And then it feels like our generation, we had influence from like the mid 2010s to now, going into like the mid 2020s, and it feels like already by the mid 2020s, where we are right now, we only lasted a decade, and now it's gone, and Gen Alpha's in, and they're not even, their brain isn't even fully developed. Like, they're not even at the age of accountability yet. Now, my brain technically isn't fully developed either, because they say it develops by the age of 25, but like, you know what I mean. They can't even drive yet. They're not even at the age of accountability yet. And it's like, what is happening? Why is it going so fast? But to get back on topic, where was that early time where everything was changing and the boomers had a good economy? They had all this stuff, the civil rights movement, their prime lasted for 2.5 decades, things were changing. Where did that come from? World War II. Now, I'm not saying we need a war. I'm just saying something crazy happened, something tragic happened, and it made the whole world be like, whoa, that's nuts. That's crazy. Because before that, the world was very conformed. You know what I mean? The world was very conformed. And the world was very corrupt, and it felt like the Great Depression happened. It felt like life was bad and all that, and then all of a sudden a war happened and life was good. Something crazy happened. Not saying we need a war, and not saying we even need like something like that crazy to happen, like a war, but like we need something to change our perspective on life, so that Gen Z, it isn't even about a power thing. I kind of came out with like how I thought it was weird. I don't even care about influence and power, like I already said. It's just, it's so weird. But when I look from the outside in, from like a Christian perspective of like, I'm not of this world, so I don't have to worry about that. Even just looking from the outside in, the timeline of influences and power and the internet culture from like Gen Z to Gen Alpha is just so weird. And we're in a weird state of history right now that is like so different from any other generation. And it's like, this is so weird, and if we keep going down this path, it's just going to keep going faster and faster and faster and faster and faster and faster until one day you'll have a generation who, by the time they start high school, they're already going to be like feeling like they have nothing left, feeling like they have no opportunities left, and feeling like everything is way too expensive, and they're like, I'm not even going to have a chance in life to do anything that I want to. And that, like, I feel like already it's not going to work. Like, you're going to have so much more depression, so much more doomer, gloom, and, like, it's just going to get worse if we don't have something change. And that's really all I just wanted to say. My opinion, I don't know.